Welcome to Ancient Wisdom. My name is Socrates, and tonight I am going to talk about Anaximander, the man who looked into the unknown and called it the boundless. Before we begin, I invite you to rest. Let the weight of the day slide gently from your shoulders. Let your breath find its own slow rhythm. You do not have to hold on to any thought. Only listen and let the words drift through you like waves upon the shore. Anaximander lived long before my time, before Athens became the shining city of marble and debate, before philosophers filled the air with questions. He walked the earth when the world was still young, when myths and gods ruled men's minds, and yet, within his quiet heart, there stirred a thought that was greater than myth, a thought that reached for the infinite. In those days, the people of Ionia gazed upon the world with awe and fear. They saw thunder as the anger of Zeus, the sea as the mood of Poseidon, and the wind as the whisper of invisible spirits. But Anaximander, born in the city of Miletus by the wide blue sea, looked at the same sky and saw something else. He saw order where others saw chaos. He saw pattern where others saw the whims of gods. And in the quiet of his thought, he asked the question that would awaken philosophy. From where does everything come? That question, my friend, is the true beginning of wisdom. It is the flame that lights the lamp of all seekers. When you ask not what things are, but why they are, you begin to walk the same path Anaximander once walked under the ancient stars. He was the student of Thales, who believed that all things were born of water. But Anaximander was not content with that answer. He looked upon the sky, upon the sea, upon the mountains, and thought, if all comes from water, then from what comes water itself? What lies beyond even the elements? And so he imagined something vast and eternal, something without boundary or beginning. He called it the Apeiron, the boundless. Not a god, not a spirit, but an endless, unseen principle, infinite, ageless, and undying. All things come from it, and to it all must return. I like to think of that idea when I gaze into the night sky. The stars seem to stretch forever, but somewhere beyond them there is more. Even the light we see will fade into silence, yet from that silence, new light will rise. This is the truth Anaximander whispered to time itself, that creation is not a single act, but a breathing, a rhythm of giving and returning. So as you listen, breathe slowly with the cosmos. Let your thoughts expand into the great boundless. Imagine the world before names and nations, when all things were still folded together in the infinite. Imagine that stillness, that quiet from which everything begins. Tonight, I will walk with you through the life and mind of this forgotten sage. Together, we will see how his thoughts gave birth to science, to philosophy, to the very idea of reason itself. And by the end, perhaps you will feel a touch of that same boundlessness within your own soul, the calm awareness that everything changes, yet nothing is ever truly lost. Rest easy now, for our journey begins not in noise or debate, but in silence, the silence from which the first question arose. That silence is where Anaximander found the boundless. And it is where all wisdom, even mine, must return. When I think of the beginnings of wisdom, I do not think of temples or scrolls. I think of a boy standing at the edge of the sea. The sun is rising over Ionia, turning the water to gold. The air is still, and the world seems to be holding its breath. That boy is Anaximander, not yet a philosopher, only a quiet child who listens more than he speaks. He watches the waves roll in and out. He wonders, why do they never tire? What gives them their rhythm, their ceaseless motion? He looks at the sky and asks, what holds it up? He looks at the earth and asks, what keeps it from falling? questions that no one around him can answer without speaking of gods or miracles. But even as a child, Anaximander feels that there must be another way to understand. In those early years, Miletus was alive with trade and talk. Sailors came from Egypt, Lydia, and faraway Phoenicia. They brought with them not just spices and cloth, but ideas, stories of creation, tales of divine storms, and the voices of countless gods. Yet among those voices, Anaximander sought something quieter, a truth not told in myth, but written in the fabric of the world itself. As the boy grows, he learns to mark the passing of days by the sun's shadow on the wall, and the months by the fullness of the moon. He begins to see patterns in all things, the way the stars move in silent order, the way winter follows autumn, the way every life blooms and fades and returns again. He starts to sense that the world is not ruled by chance, but by rhythm, a hidden harmony that unites everything. The people of his city laugh softly at his strange thoughts. "Why ask what cannot be known?" they say. But Anaximander cannot stop. The question burns like a small, steady flame inside him. From what does all this arise? The mountains, the wind, the thunder, the warmth of the hearth, are they truly so different? Or are they faces of one eternal thing? When I, Socrates, look back across time to him, I see in that boy the same spark that lives in every philosopher, that gentle discontent with easy answers. It is not rebellion but wonder. It is the refusal to accept ignorance as peace. It is the stirring of the soul that whispers, "There is more." Anaximander grows to manhood, still walking the same streets, still gazing at the same sky. But now he begins to think as the universe thinks, not in stories but in balance, in opposites, in cycles. He begins to see that fire and water, light and darkness, birth and death, they are not enemies. They are dancers in the same eternal circle. One evening, as the sun sinks into the sea, he feels something deep and wordless, a realization that the world itself might be alive, endless, and self-sustaining. No god had to shape it. It needed no craftsman. The world, he thought, has always been and will always be. In that thought, the myths of men began to fade like mist before dawn. The mind of Anaximander had awakened to something far greater, the first glimpse of the Apeiron, though he had not yet given it a name. And I, as I tell you this under the quiet veil of night, ask you to look within yourself for the same light of curiosity. Let your own mind wander as his did, without fear, without hurry. For every question, however small, is a doorway to the infinite. Tonight, as you drift deeper into stillness, imagine that young philosopher standing by the shore, the first dawn of reason shining softly on his face. He does not know yet where his thoughts will lead, but he feels the call of something vast and eternal. The sea whispers to him and the sky listens. And in that silence, a new way of seeing the world is born. When the young Anaximander came of age, his restless curiosity found a guide at Miletus. There lived a man already known for his strange and daring thought. Thales, the wise observer of stars and tides, that he was the first to say aloud what few had ever dared to imagine, that the world could be understood not through myth, but through reason, that nature itself could speak, if one listened patiently enough. I imagine their first meeting, the elder and the youth walking together by the harbor, the sea murmuring below the cliffs. Thales, with his calm eyes, would trace patterns in the air, explaining how everything from the stars above to the roots beneath shared one essence. All things, he said, are made of water. It is the beginning of all, and all returns to it. Anaximander listened in reverent silence. Here at last, was a man who sought causes beyond the gods, who believed the world was governed by order and not by divine whim. To hear such words was like seeing lightning in the mind. Thales had lifted the veil. But even as Anaximander admired his teacher's vision, another question began to stir within him. If all things come from water, he wondered, what gives rise to the water itself? If water is the source, then what is the source of the source? There, in that single thought, lay the seed of a greater leap, a step that would carry human understanding beyond the tangible and into the infinite. In those days, learning was not confined to scrolls or schools. It was lived in conversation, in observation, in the slow art of looking deeply. Thales would take Anaximander to the river's edge and ask him to notice how life emerged from moisture. Plants, fish, clouds, and rain. That he would speak of how the same substance takes many forms, how the river becomes vapor, the vapor becomes rain, and the rain returns to the river again. Anaximander nodded, but he also sensed that beneath these transformations lay something unseen, something greater than water or air or earth itself. As they studied the heavens together, mapping the constellations and marking eclipses, Anaximander began to glimpse an order more vast than the elements. That he watched how the stars never faltered in their course, how the moon returned like a faithful friend, how the balance of opposites sustained all life. That he began to feel that behind this balance there must be a principle, not material, not visible, but eternal. Thales spoke of the river. Anaximander began to hear the silence beneath the current. Often, as night fell and the fires in the harbor dimmed, he would sit alone by the sea, his cloak drawn close, the stars trembling upon the waves. That he would whisper to himself, "Water, yes, but what gives birth to the water?" He could not rest with half an answer. For him, truth was not comfort, it was hunger. And so he did what all seekers must do when their teacher's wisdom no longer satisfies the soul. He bowed to Thales in gratitude and began to walk alone. That first step away from his master was not rebellion. It was reverence for truth. That he knew that Thales had shown him how to ask, but now he must learn to listen, not to a man but to existence itself. When I, Socrates, reflect on this, I see my own path mirrored in his. For every thinker must one day look beyond his teacher's lamp and walk into the vast, starlit dark, guided only by wonder. So too did Anaximander, leaving behind the safety of answers, stepping into the mystery that would one day be called the Apeiron. In that silent space beyond understanding, he began to sense what few before him ever had. That beneath all form, beneath all change, there is something boundless, endless, ageless, eternal. And as the tide rose around his feet, he whispered into the night, "It cannot be water, it must be something without limit." The sea breathed softly in reply, as if agreeing, and thus began his journey beyond even his teacher's wisdom, into the infinite itself. There are moments in a thinker's life when a single word reshapes the world. For Anaximander, that word was Apeiron, the boundless. He did not find it in a temple, nor learn it from another man. It arose within him, quietly, like dawn spreading behind the mountains. He began to see that everything we know, earth, water, air, and fire, is limited. Each has its nature, its boundary, its end. But the source of all things could not be limited, for limits themselves must come from something greater. If the sea has a shore, then what lies beyond the shore? If time has a beginning, who marked the first moment? In these gentle questions, Anaximander felt the whisper of the infinite. And so he spoke of Apeiron, not a god nor a substance, but a principle beyond all opposites. It has no birth, no death, no color, no shape. It is the womb of existence, the breath that moves unseen through every transformation. From it, the heavens unfold, and to it all things return. He called it deathless and indestructible, the mother and father of all worlds. When I think upon his words, I imagine the stillness of the night sky. No edge to its darkness, no border to its quiet. That vastness is not emptiness, it is potential waiting patiently for form. Just as silence waits for sound, or peace waits beneath the noise of our thoughts. Many of his people could not understand him. "What is this boundless you speak of?" they asked. "If it cannot be seen, touched, or measured, how can it be real?" But Anaximander only smiled. He knew that the truest things are not held by the hands but by the heart. He saw that reality begins where vision ends. To him, the Apeiron was not an absence. It was the unseen harmony that gives birth to everything we know. He said that from the boundless, the elements separate and take their turn in ruling. When one grows too strong, when fire consumes too much or water floods too far, balance is restored and justice is done. Every excess must return to the boundless, for all things are equal before the eternal. It was a vision not only of nature but of morality, that harmony is peace and moderation is law. To live by that law, he taught, is to live wisely. To remember that all victories fade, all storms settle, and all pride dissolves back into the quiet from which it came. I too have seen this truth in the souls of men, that arrogance leads to fall, and that humility is the path of return. Anaximander saw the same in the cosmos. He would often walk through the marketplace of Miletus, his mind filled with wonder. The voices of merchants, the laughter of children, the call of the sea, all of it seemed to him like ripples upon the surface of something deeper. He felt that every life, every breeze, every spark of fire was the boundless revealing itself for a brief moment, then returning to its eternal rest. And in this thought he found peace. For if everything comes from the infinite and returns to it, then nothing is truly lost. Change itself becomes sacred, a rhythm, not a tragedy. I sometimes think that he discovered long before any of us the meaning of serenity. To see the boundless in all things, in the stone, in the star, in the fleeting breath between two thoughts, and to trust that whatever happens, the whole remains whole. So as you lie here listening, imagine that same vast stillness surrounding you. The air you breathe, the pulse of your heart, the silence between your breaths, all part of one endless rhythm. That is the Apeiron. It has no center, for it is everywhere. It has no end, for it is forever. Let this thought soften your mind. Let it drift like a leaf upon the sea of eternity. For you too come from the boundless, and one day peacefully you shall return. Anaximander once said that all things arise from the boundless by separating into opposites, and that in time they return to it again, each paying the penalty for its excess. When I first heard those words, I felt as though I were listening to the quiet law that governs the heartbeat of the universe. Think of the flame and the rain, the heat and the cold, the light and the shadow. Each seems to struggle against the other, and yet, without their dance, there would be no world at all. The flame needs darkness to be seen. The rain needs the thirst of the earth to fall. Life needs death so that new life may come. And death, in its quiet mercy, makes life precious. Anaximander saw this balance everywhere, in the turning of the seasons, in the tide's retreat and return, in the birth of stars and their gentle fading. He called it justice, though not the justice of courts or kings. This was the justice of nature, the unspoken harmony that ensures that no force dominates forever. When summer burns too long, winter restores the cool. When pride grows tall, humility brings it low. When chaos rises, order answers. And so the world remains in rhythm. When I, Socrates, walk through the streets of Athens and hear men argue about right and wrong, I sometimes remember Anaximander's teaching. He would say that nothing can live in unbroken triumph. To take more than one's share is to disturb the sacred balance. The wind that blows too fiercely dies into calm. The man who hungers too greatly for power finds his spirit consumed by his own fire. It is strange, perhaps, that a man of science could speak with the wisdom of a sage. But Anaximander's science was never cold. For him, to understand the world was to honor it. He saw that knowledge is not domination, it is reverence. To study nature was to listen to her music, not to command her song. He would often draw circles in the sand to show how opposites depend upon each other. This, he would say, tracing the outer ring, is fire. Then he'd draw another, smaller circle within it. This is air. And within that, earth and water. Each circle containing the next, each returning to the one beyond it. See how they do not fight but balance each other. The flame would devour the world if not for the sea. The sea would drown the stars if not for the warmth of the sun. Everything gives and everything takes. Thus, the boundless remains whole. I find deep peace in that vision, for it teaches that the world is not ruled by violence, but by equilibrium, even when we cannot see it. What seems to us like chaos is only a pattern we have not yet understood. The storm passes and the calm reveals what the wind could not destroy. Perhaps that is why Anaximander never feared the future. He knew that even in loss there is restoration. Even in sorrow, a return to balance. The universe, he believed, corrects itself with infinite patience. And what is true for the cosmos, he would say, is true for the soul. When anger burns within you, let compassion cool it. When fear floods your heart, let courage rise like the morning sun. When pride blinds you, remember the boundless, and humility will guide you home. So, as you listen to these words, breathe softly. Imagine within you the same harmony that turns the seasons and guides the stars. The opposites in your heart, love and loss, joy and sorrow, strength and doubt, are not enemies. They are partners in a dance as old as time. Each gives meaning to the other. Each keeps your spirit in balance. When you understand this, you no longer resist the changing winds of life. You let them pass through you gently, like air through open hands. And in that surrender, you discover peace. For balance is not control, it is trust. And trust, dear listener, is the beginning of wisdom. Anaximander often said that the universe does not begin or end, it moves in circles. What is born must one day return, and what passes away shall rise again. He saw that time itself was not a line stretching endlessly forward, but a turning wheel, vast, patient, and eternal. When I, Socrates, think upon his vision, I see not just the heavens spinning in their courses, but the pattern of every life. The seed becomes the tree becomes ash, and from the ash, new soil is born. The child becomes the man becomes memory, and memory becomes wisdom whispered to another child. There is no final loss, only transformation. Anaximander taught that worlds, too, are born and die as men do. That from the boundless, a world will emerge, bright and young, full of motion and heat. It will grow, flourish, and one day, like all living things, it will fall back into the silence that bore it. And from that silence, another world will rise. Countless worlds, born one after another, like breaths drawn by the infinite. When he spoke of this, people stared at him in wonder, for they believed that the cosmos was fixed, eternal in its form. But Anaximander saw movement even in eternity. He felt the pulse of change in the heart of all that exists. To him, stability was not stillness, it was rhythm. Sometimes when I walk beneath the stars, I imagine I can feel that same pulse, slow, ancient, and kind. The moon circles the earth circles the sun, and the soul circles understanding. Each returns again and again to its beginning, learning more with every turn. Nothing truly stands alone. Everything is part of a grand returning. He believed too that life follows this same sacred circle, that nothing vanishes, it only changes form. What we call death, he said, is but a rest between transformations. The breath that leaves one body enters another. The warmth that fades from one fire kindles the next. To see this is to be free from fear, for fear grows only where we believe in endings. And yet, Anaximander was no mystic lost in dreams. He was a man of keen eyes and steady mind. He saw the cycle of time written in the stars, in the tides, in the pattern of shadows upon the sundial. He observed how each day is born from the death of the night, and each night is born again from the fading of the day. He saw that change was not the enemy of order, it was the breath that kept the universe alive. He would often draw a spiral in the sand, beginning at the center and slowly widening outward. This, he would say, is time. It moves, yet it returns. Each turn is a life, a season, a world. And then, with a soft smile, he would brush it away with his hand, leaving only smooth sand once more, the symbol of the boundless awaiting another cycle. I find comfort in this vision. It tells us that no joy is ever truly lost and no sorrow lasts forever. Everything moves, but nothing disappears. The stars above you tonight have burned, died, and been reborn countless times. Even now, their light travels across ages to reach your eyes. You are seeing not just the present, but the memory of the universe itself. So rest in the rhythm of it all. Let the thought of the circle of time quiet your heart. You do not need to hold on to anything, for all that is yours will return in its own hour. The same light that fades at dusk will rise again at dawn. The same peace you feel now will find you again when the wheel turns. Close your eyes and imagine that endless turning, vast, serene, without beginning or end. The stars, the oceans, the breath in your chest, all part of that same circle. And in that perfect motion, everything is safe, everything belongs, and everything forever finds its way home. When the light of thought dawned fully within him, Anaximander began not only to wonder about the heavens, but also to measure the world beneath his feet. He looked at the land and the sea with the same reverence he once reserved for the stars. He believed that to know the world was not to conquer it, but to understand its beauty through harmony and proportion. He was among the first to draw what we might now call a map, a picture of the earth as seen from the mind, not from the eyes. Imagine him sitting upon a smooth rock by the harbor, a tablet of wax or papyrus resting across his knees, a reed dipped in dark ink. The waves break softly nearby. Before him, traders and sailors describe the lands they have seen, the mountains of Lydia, the coasts of Egypt, the islands scattered like pearls across the Aegean. Anaximander listens, not with the curiosity of a merchant, but with the stillness of a philosopher. He is not interested in what can be sold or bought, but in how all these places fit together, how the land breathes like a single being. He begins to mark the shapes of continents, the curve of the sea, the flow of rivers. Each stroke is slow and careful, as if he were tracing the face of the divine. and when the drawing is complete, he looks upon it and whispers, "The world is one. No longer a collection of fragments, no longer an endless horizon of mystery, but one continuous body, united by unseen law." This act, so simple, so quiet, was the first time a man dared to imagine the world as a whole, to see it not through myth, but through reason. He placed the earth not upon the back of a turtle or the shoulders of a titan, but suspended freely in space, balanced by nothing, held by harmony alone. That thought even now fills me with wonder, for in that single idea he freed the world from fear. The people of Miletus could not understand. "How can the earth hang in the void?" they asked. "Without pillars or foundation, how can it stay where it is?" But Anaximander smiled gently and said, "It falls nowhere, for it has no place to fall. It rests at the center of all things, equally distant from everything else." In those words, he revealed the courage of pure reason, the faith that truth can stand without myth to hold it. He had looked at the stars, measured the shadows, traced the winds, and seen that balance was everywhere. The earth needed no support because it was itself part of a balanced, boundless whole. When I close my eyes and picture him, that quiet thinker with ink-stained fingers, sketching the shape of the world upon the soft light of dawn, I feel a calm joy rise within me. For he was doing what all philosophers must one day do, to take the unknown and give it form, to translate wonder into understanding. And yet he was not proud of his work. He did not claim to possess the world by drawing it. He merely wished to show that all things are connected, that the mountain and the wave, the cloud and the grain of sand belong to one another. He saw unity where others saw distance, and by seeing it, he gave humankind its first vision of a single living earth. So tonight, as you rest, imagine that ancient map, drawn not with lines of power, but with lines of peace. The seas curve softly around the land, the stars wheel above in silent rhythm. All things have their place, and their place is balance. You are upon that same earth still, the same soil, the same sea, the same stars above your roof. Anaximander's map lives within you too, for your soul also seeks to draw its lines of harmony, connecting thought to thought, dream to dream. Let that image soothe you. Let it remind you that you are part of something vast and ordered, a single world suspended in the quiet grace of infinity. And as your breath slows, imagine yourself floating gently at the center of all things, balanced perfectly in peace, just as Anaximander once imagined our earth to be. When Anaximander lifted his gaze from the map of the earth to the vastness above, his wonder deepened. The stars, the moon, the sun, they no longer seemed like divine fires scattered by gods, but parts of a grand and ordered design. He looked upon the heavens as a craftsman might study a perfect wheel, each spoke moving with purpose, each rotation bound to rhythm. And so, in quiet contemplation, he conceived what no man before him had dared to imagine, a model of the cosmos. He saw the universe not as chaos ruled by divine tempers, but as harmony, a vast system of balance and movement. He believed the earth hung free, unmoving, surrounded by invisible wheels of fire. These rings of flame, encased in air, hidden from sight, were pierced by openings through which the fire's glow could be seen. Through one opening shone the sun, through another the moon, and through many others the stars. When the openings turned away, darkness fell. When they turned toward us, light returned. It may sound simple now, yet in his time it was revelation. For in that moment, he pulled the heavens down from divine mystery and set them upon the stage of nature. The sky, once ruled by capricious gods, became a vast and beautiful machine, living, ordered, eternal. I often wonder how it felt for him, standing alone beneath the night sky, realizing that the glittering dome above was not the ceiling of heaven but the body of infinity itself. The fear that once filled men's hearts must have fallen away like mist before morning. In its place, quiet awe. To him, every star was not a sign of fate but a part of truth. Every spark of light, a reminder that the universe is alive with reason. He had replaced fear with understanding, and in doing so, brought light into the human soul. He also sought to measure the heavens. He studied shadows and seasons, noting how the sun rose higher in summer and sank lower in winter. He built instruments of wood and bronze, crude perhaps by our measure, yet divine in intent, the first steps toward the science of the sky. And as he measured, he felt the heartbeat of time itself, steady, endless, gentle. He saw the heavens not as distant or divine, but as kin to the earth. The same principles that govern the tides govern the stars. The same justice that kept the seasons in balance ruled the motion of the cosmos. To him, the universe was a living organism, bound together by the harmony of opposites. Nothing stood alone. Everything moved in concert, fire with air, earth with water, light with shadow. And yet, though he understood so much, he did not boast of it. He spoke softly of his discoveries, for he knew that knowledge is sacred only when carried humbly. He did not seek worship but wonder, not followers but thinkers. He wished to awaken curiosity, not belief. I see in him the purest kind of philosopher, one who seeks truth for its own sake. He taught that to look at the sky was not to escape the world, but to understand it more deeply. That to study the stars was to glimpse the order that also lives within ourselves. When I close my eyes, I can almost hear the sea around Miletus and see him standing on a hill, his cloak stirred by the wind, his eyes reflecting the starlight. He looks upward, and perhaps for a moment he smiles, not because he has conquered mystery, but because he has learned to live peacefully beside it. So tonight, as you drift in quiet thought, imagine yourself beneath that same ancient sky. The stars still move as they did then, slowly, patiently, bound by the same eternal rhythm. You are watching what Anaximander once watched, breathing the same air, standing upon the same earth he mapped. The universe he revealed has never changed. Only our eyes have opened wider. Let this bring you peace. For you too are part of that cosmic order, a spark of the same fire, a ripple in the same eternal sea. And as the stars turn silently above, you may feel what he once felt, that the world is not chaos but harmony, and that the infinite is, at heart, perfectly calm. In the stillness of his later years, Anaximander began to wonder not only about the heavens and the earth, but about life itself, that fragile spark that stirs within dust and water, that rises from silence to sing, to walk, to think. He looked upon the creatures of the sea, upon the reeds by the marshes, upon the crawling things of the shore, and he felt a deep and tender curiosity. From where does life arise? In the ancient world, men said that the gods shaped living beings from clay, breathing into them the spark of divinity. But Anaximander thought otherwise. He saw life not as a gift from the gods, but as a natural awakening of the earth itself. He believed that long ago, when the world was still young and warm, life began in the moist womb of the sea. The sun's fire, striking the waters, had stirred them into motion, and from that motion, gentle and ceaseless, came the first living forms. He said that creatures once lived where sea and earth met, in the mingling of elements, carried by water, warmed by light. And in time, some grew strong enough to leave their cradle and walk upon the dry land. Their shapes changed with their needs, adapting to each new home. He was the first to whisper what men would not fully understand for thousands of years: that life is change, and that all beings are bound by one continuous breath. I sometimes imagine him walking along the shore at dusk, his robes brushed by salt wind, watching the waves crash and retreat. He sees the fish leap, the birds dive, the shells glitter at his feet, and he senses the kinship of all things. The fish and the bird, the worm and the man, all children of the same boundless mother, all returning one day to her quiet embrace. To Anaximander, this thought was not pride, but reverence. He did not see man as master of the world, but as a part of its song. We are not rulers of creation, he would have said, but notes in its eternal harmony. Our breath is the ocean's breath. Our warmth is the warmth of the sun. The same force that turns the stars also beats within our hearts. And so he taught that to harm the world is to harm oneself, for all things are connected by the same invisible thread. He could not have spoken of atoms or evolution, yet his heart understood what the mind of later ages would prove: that life is not many but one, that death is not an end, but a return to the source from which life first flowed. When I, Socrates, ponder his teaching, I feel a quiet gratitude, for he saw what many of us forget: that wisdom begins with humility before nature, that the truest philosopher does not stand above life, but within it, listening to the whispers of the earth, learning from the rhythm of its seasons. He once said, "From that which was warm and moist came all living things, and to it all return." A simple line, yet behind it lies the infinite circle of being: birth, growth, decay, and renewal. He knew that the same waters which cradle life will one day wash away our names, and still the song of creation will continue. And perhaps that is why he spoke not with despair, but with peace. To him, existence was not a fragile accident. It was the unfolding of the boundless through living forms, each a moment in eternity's breath. So tonight, let that vision calm your heart. Feel the air filling your lungs, that same breath that once filled the sails of ancient ships, that brushed the waves at Miletus, that stirred the waters where life began. You are part of that endless exchange. When you inhale, the world breathes through you. When you exhale, you return your gift to it. The ocean, the stars, the earth, and your own heart, all beating together, all belonging to the same boundless source. And in knowing this, you may find the peace that Anaximander felt when he stood by the sea. The quiet joy of understanding that to live is to participate in the eternal rhythm of creation. Anaximander often said that nothing in this world remains still, that all things move, transform, and pass away according to a sacred law. He called it justice, though not in the way men use that word for courts or punishment. His justice was deeper, the law of balance that governs the cosmos. He believed that every force in nature, every element and creature, borrows its moment of power from the boundless, and must, in time, give it back. When one grows too strong, the universe gently restores the equilibrium. No fire burns forever. No winter lasts without end. Each takes its turn, fulfills its purpose, and yields again to silence. To him, this was not tragedy, it was mercy. For he saw that harmony lives not in permanence, but in the willingness to change. The stars themselves obey this law. They rise, they fade, they are born anew in the unseen depths of time. The rivers carve mountains, the mountains return to dust, and from that dust, new rivers begin. He once said, "All things pay recompense to one another for their injustice, according to the order of time." What a gentle thought, that even destruction is not cruel, but part of a grand restoration. The cosmos does not punish, it corrects. It guides all things back toward balance the way a hand steadies a flame. When I reflect upon this, I find peace in my own heart. For men often fear change, believing it steals what they love. Yet change is not theft, it is transformation. The child must fade for the man to be born. The leaf must fall for the tree to rest. Even the brightest day must give way to night, so the soul may dream and renew itself. Anaximander understood that clinging leads to sorrow. He saw that the world breathes, expanding and contracting, giving and taking, and that we, being part of it, must breathe the same way. To resist change is to hold one's breath against the tide of life. To accept it is to float effortlessly upon the sea of being. In this, he gave us a quiet lesson in ethics. He showed that moderation is not weakness, but wisdom. That excess, in hunger, in power, in pride, disturbs the natural balance and in time must be undone. He saw morality and nature as reflections of the same truth, that peace lives only in harmony. When I walk through Athens and hear men argue for victory or wealth, I often think of him. He would have smiled gently and said, "Do not grasp so tightly at what will soon change on its own. Let it come, let it go. The world will bring it round again." He taught that even sorrow, when seen with calm eyes, is simply another turn of the eternal wheel, necessary, purposeful, and never final. For every loss gives birth to new beginnings, just as every ending clears space for what must follow. So, as you listen tonight, breathe with that understanding. The breath you draw in is not the same as the one you release, yet together they make the rhythm of life. The moments you have loved will fade, yes, but their fading allows new light to enter. Nothing vanishes, it only transforms into another form of the boundless. When you lie awake worrying about what may come, remember the law of change. The storms of today will pass into the calm of tomorrow, and even tomorrow will flow into another dawn. Your heart, too, follows this law, contracting with pain, expanding with joy, always returning to balance. That is the justice of the universe. Not a punishment, not a reward, but the quiet turning of all things toward wholeness. Let that thought settle within you now. Let it untie the knots of fear and longing. You are part of a law older than the stars, a law that ensures nothing is lost, only reshaped. In that law lies your peace, and in that peace the boundless breathes through you. There is a kind of silence known only to those who walk ahead of their time, a silence that follows the thinker who sees what others cannot yet see. Anaximander knew that silence well. Though his ideas gave light to generations after him, in his own day he walked much of his path alone. The people of Miletus admired him, but they could not always understand him. They lived by the comfort of old stories, gods in the clouds, monsters in the sea, destiny written by divine hands. But Anaximander spoke of balance instead of vengeance, of nature instead of gods, of the infinite instead of Olympus. To some, he seemed strange, perhaps even dangerous. For when a man begins to seek truth beyond tradition, he stands in the open wind of solitude. Yet solitude did not sadden him. It strengthened him. He found companionship not in crowds, but in the quiet company of thought. When he gazed upon the night sky, he felt the presence of something vast, the boundless itself, and that was enough. He did not need applause or agreement. He needed only understanding. I too have known such silence. I have walked the streets of Athens while men whispered that I corrupted the youth, that my questions stirred unrest. And in that loneliness, I often thought of Anaximander, the first of us to stand before the unknown without trembling. He showed that truth requires patience, and that wisdom grows best in solitude, like a seed deep beneath the soil. There were nights, I imagine, when he walked through the quiet hills outside Miletus, his cloak drawn close, the stars wheeling above him. No voice but his own mind, no company but the rhythm of his footsteps. He would pause to look at the horizon, where the sea melted into darkness, and feel within him that same boundless depth. He must have known then that understanding comes not to those who seek noise, but to those who listen for the faint hum beneath existence. His solitude was not the loneliness of absence, it was the presence of something greater. He was alone yet not apart. In that stillness, he touched the soul of the universe itself. He once said that the boundless is eternal and divine because it depends on nothing. Perhaps he saw in himself a reflection of that principle, self-contained, unshaken by praise or doubt. He lived by the same justice he found in nature, to take only what is needed, to give when it is time, and to rest in balance. In solitude, his thoughts deepened into clarity. He no longer needed to prove or persuade. He needed only to understand. He came to see that the thinker's true reward is not fame, but peace. The world may mock or forget him, but truth remembers. And truth, for those who love it, is companionship enough. He would watch the dawn rise above the sea and whisper to himself, "All things come and go, yet the boundless remains." And with that, he would smile, for he knew that even if no one heard him, the universe itself was listening. We, too, live in a world that often misunderstands those who question deeply. Yet every mind that dares to ask why walks the same quiet road that Anaximander once walked. It is a road of solitude, yes, but it leads to light. So if you ever find yourself alone with your thoughts, unsure and unseen, remember this ancient seeker. He teaches that solitude is not emptiness, it is space for truth to bloom. The quiet you fear is the same silence from which creation itself was born. Let that bring you comfort tonight. When all noise fades and only your breathing remains, know that you share that stillness with every great mind that ever lived. In the silence, the boundless is near. In the solitude of your own being, you are never truly alone. As time moved gently forward, the wisdom of Anaximander did not fade with him. Like ripples born from a single stone cast into a still pond, his thoughts spread outward, touching new minds, awakening new seekers. He had no grand academy, no marble halls or crowds of admirers. His classroom was the open air, the shore, the starlit night, the quiet company of those few who wished to learn not what to think, but how to see. Among those who gathered near him was a youth named Anaximenes, curious, sharp-eyed, and full of the same wonder his master once carried as a boy. To him, Anaximander passed the flame of inquiry, that sacred fire that never consumes, only illuminates. He taught him to question gently, to observe the world as a listener, not a judge. He showed him that wisdom is not the possession of answers, but the patience to dwell in questions. I imagine them together at dusk, walking the edge of Miletus, the sea breathing its slow rhythm beside them. The old philosopher points toward the horizon. The same air you breathe fills the space between stars, he says. Do not separate yourself from the cosmos, Anaximenes. You are a fragment of the boundless, learning to know itself. The young man listens, eyes bright, his heart wide open. And thus another mind awakens. This is how truth survives, not through monuments but through memory, not through rule but through example. Each thinker becomes a bridge for the next. Thales taught Anaximander. Anaximander taught Anaximenes, and so the chain continued, each adding a stone to the path that leads humanity toward understanding. By the time I, Socrates, was born, that path had become a road, still narrow, but shining faintly beneath the dust of centuries. I have often said that a teacher is not one who fills the cup, but one who lights the lamp. Anaximander lit many lamps. He gave permission to question, to observe, to imagine beyond the scene. His students did not worship him, they joined him in wonder. And that is how philosophy began, not as a doctrine but as a conversation between minds. He once told them, "Do not seek truth as if it were a treasure buried in the ground. Truth is like breath. It surrounds you, it moves through you, but it cannot be held." And with that, he gave the first lesson of humility in thought. When his students asked him about death, he smiled and said, "The boundless is never born and never dies. What we call death is only the return of form to the infinite. When you understand that, fear will vanish." Those words must have settled into their hearts like seeds waiting for rain. Years later, those students would speak to others and others still, and from that quiet beginning, the great tree of philosophy would rise. Pythagoras, Heraclitus, Plato, and even I, all drank from the well that Anaximander first uncovered. He did not live to see what would grow from his work, but perhaps in his final days, he felt the calm certainty that truth needs no witness to endure. Teaching to him was not a task but a kindness, the natural act of a soul overflowing with light. He did not instruct by authority but by example, living simply, thinking deeply, asking softly. He showed that the true master does not seek followers. He seeks thinkers who will surpass him. When I remember him, I feel as though I am sitting once more beside an old friend whose words drift like waves upon the evening air. He speaks not to impress, but to awaken. He reminds me that the purpose of wisdom is not to rule the mind, but to free it. And so his spirit lives on, not in temples, not in marble, but in every quiet moment when one person turns to another and says, "Look deeper." Let that thought rest with you tonight. If you have ever taught another with patience, or listened with care, or shared an insight that brought someone peace, then you too have walked in Anaximander's footsteps. For the teacher of seekers never truly vanishes. He lives wherever wonder is born. When I, Socrates, reflect upon the long road of thought that brought me into this world, I see Anaximander standing near its beginning, a solitary figure between the realm of myth and the dawn of reason. He was the bridge, the one who carried the flame of wonder across the river that separates story from understanding. Before him, men spoke of thunder as the cry of angry gods, and earthquakes as the stomping of invisible beasts. But he asked, what if the world moves not by will, but by order? He stepped forward, gently but firmly, from fear into inquiry. And by doing so, he changed forever the direction of the human spirit. Every philosopher who came after him, Pythagoras, Heraclitus, Democritus, even Plato and I, owe a quiet debt to that early seeker from Miletus. For he showed us that the divine does not hide in temples or statues, but breathes through all that exists. He taught that truth is not something one receives. It is something one discovers by looking with calm eyes. He built, stone by stone, the foundation upon which all thought now stands. Thales had asked what the world was made of. Anaximander asked from where it came. That question, so small, so subtle, opened the doorway to philosophy. For in that single shift, man ceased to describe and began to understand. He was the first to see that behind all the beauty and turmoil of existence lies unity, an unseen balance binding all opposites together. He was the first to call this unity by a name, the boundless, the eternal well from which everything flows. And though his words were simple, their echo has never stopped. When I spoke later in Athens, in the shade of the Stoa or the marketplace, I carried that same spirit within me. When I asked my students to examine their lives, to question what they believe, to seek the good within the self, I was walking the bridge he had built. For philosophy as he began it, was not merely the study of the world, it was the art of awakening the soul. He made it possible for men to think without trembling, to wonder without fear, to love truth more than certainty. He showed that to doubt is not to destroy faith, but to purify it, to draw nearer to the eternal law that holds all things. I often imagine meeting him beyond time, in that quiet space where all seekers dwell. He sits upon a stone, watching the sea, the wind tracing lines upon the water. He turns to me and says softly, "Do you see, Socrates?" The question never ends. Each answer becomes another beginning. And I would smile, for I know it is so. Each generation adds its voice to the great dialogue of the cosmos. Each question extends the bridge a little farther into the unknown. The path from Anaximander to me, from me to Plato, from Plato to Aristotle, and onward, is not a road of conquest but of continuity. The torch passes gently, hand to hand, mind to mind. No one owns it. We only carry it long enough to light the next traveler's way. That is the true immortality of wisdom, not in names or monuments, but in the unbroken chain of understanding. He was the first link, and though centuries have washed over his name, his spirit endures in every thought that seeks reason over fear, harmony over chaos, truth over tradition. So tonight, as your thoughts drift like stars over dark water, imagine that bridge stretching across the ages. Upon it stand countless souls, each holding a small light. Thales, Anaximander, Pythagoras, Heraclitus, Plato, myself, and perhaps even you. We are all part of the same journey, crossing from darkness to clarity, from ignorance to understanding. The bridge does not end, for it leads always deeper into the boundless. And as long as there are hearts that wonder, that bridge will remain, shining softly beneath the eternal sky. Anaximander spoke of the boundless as the origin of all things, vast, eternal, and unseen. But as I, Socrates, ponder his words beneath the hush of night, I have come to believe that this boundless is not only around us, it is also within us. The infinite he saw in the stars, I have glimpsed in the quiet depths of the soul. Close your eyes for a moment and breathe. Feel the space between your breaths, that soft pause where thought rests. That stillness, that living silence, is the same mystery Anaximander sought in the heavens. You carry within you the same law that turns the stars and balances the sea. You are not separate from the boundless. You are its reflection, shaped for a little while in flesh and thought. He taught that from the infinite, all opposites arise, life and death, light and dark, motion and rest. And within us, those same opposites dwell. The mind is both storm and calm. The heart is both flame and ash. To live wisely, he would have said, is to honor both sides, to let the soul move like the tides, never clinging, never resisting. In this, he offered the first glimpse of what later philosophers would call the harmony of the self. I have seen that men often search for peace in temples, in wealth, in praise, but they forget the quiet space inside them, that sacred stillness where all answers rest. Anaximander's Boundless is not some distant element scattered beyond the stars. It is the essence that breathes through your every thought, your every heartbeat. It is the reason why love can arise from sorrow, why courage can rise from fear. It is why you can change and yet remain yourself. When I walk through the streets of Athens, I see men chasing certainty as though truth were a coin to be found in the dust. But certainty is small. The boundless cannot fit inside it. To live with wisdom is to stand calmly in the unknown, to trust the order that lives beyond our sight and within our being. Anaximander understood this long before any of us spoke the word philosophy. He saw that to study the world was, in truth, to study the soul. For the same rhythm that guides the seasons guides the pulse within your chest. The same justice that keeps fire and water in balance keeps your thoughts and emotions in their delicate dance. The same law that returns the stars to their course returns you, again and again, to the center of your being. He would have said that when you look inward and find stillness, you are not escaping the world, you are meeting it at its source. The boundless does not live in the heavens or the earth, but in the harmony between them. In the meeting of breath and silence, of knowing and wonder. So now, as you lie listening to the hush of night, imagine that vastness opening gently within you. Do not try to see it, only feel it. It is not a place, it is awareness itself, soft and endless, stretching beyond thought. It is the quiet in which every feeling rises and falls, the peace that remains when every noise fades. You are made of that peace. You are woven from the same stillness that cradles the stars. No fear, no sorrow, no doubt can truly break it, for it is not bound by time or form. It is the eternal part of you, the part that watches, that forgives, that endures. When Anaximander named the boundless, perhaps he was not describing the universe at all, but pointing us back to this, the infinite within the human spirit. The place where every thought dissolves into stillness, where every question finds rest. So breathe softly now. Let your thoughts drift like leaves on a calm sea. Feel the depth within you widen and quiet. That is the boundless. It has always been there, and it will remain long after every word and dream have passed away. And now, dear friend, we have come to the quiet end of our journey, to the place where words grow thin and thought fades gently into peace. Anaximander called it Apeiron, the boundless. But beyond even that name, there lies a silence too deep for language, too vast for definition. It is not something to be learned, it is something to be remembered, for you have known it since before you were born. When I, Socrates, speak to you now, I do not speak to your restless mind, but to the still awareness beneath it. The part of you that listens without judgment, that simply is. That stillness is your truest nature. Anaximander saw it in the cosmos. I see it in you. For what is the universe but the soul unfolded? And what is the soul but the universe folded back into a single breath? He taught that all things rise from the boundless and return to it in their time, not as punishment but as peace. When the flame fades, it does not die, it becomes warmth again in the air. When the wave falls, it does not vanish, it returns to the sea. When you close your eyes tonight, you do not cease to be, you simply return for a while to the quiet from which you came. This is the eternal rhythm of existence, giving and returning, rising and falling, breathing in and out. Nothing is lost. Nothing is wasted. Every life, every thought, every star is a whisper in the endless conversation of the boundless. If you listen closely, beneath the hum of the world, you can almost hear it, the soundless harmony that holds all things together. It is the same calm that lives between heartbeats, the same light that flickers behind your eyelids when you drift towards sleep. You do not have to reach for it. It is already here. It has always been here. Anaximander in his last days must have known this. He had traced the heavens, mapped the earth, studied the laws of life and change, and in the end he found peace not in knowledge but in surrender. He realized that wisdom is not the conquest of mystery, but the acceptance of it. He learned that the boundless does not need to be understood, only trusted. So let us rest now in that same trust. Let the past and the future fade, for they are but ripples upon the great still water of the present. Let the mind soften, let the breath grow light. You are safe in this moment, balanced at the quiet center of the universe, neither falling nor rising, simply held. All that has been, the earth, the stars, the teachers, the seekers, every joy and sorrow, lives within you, part of the same unbroken whole. And as you drift towards sleep, know this: you are not a fragment lost in the dark. You are the boundless, dreaming of form. In the silence beyond names, in the calm beyond thought, there is no division, no fear, no end. Only the eternal stillness that Anaximander once glimpsed in the stars, the same stillness that now breathes through you. Rest now in that infinite peace. Let the night gather you gently as the sea gathers the tide. Let every sound fade into the soft hum of being. And if you must dream, dream of that first light upon the waters, when the boundless whispered the world into motion, and knew that all was one. Good night. May the boundless within you remember itself. May your heart find quiet, and may the silence carry you home.